Hey there, this is James Valvis, and I'm coming at you with a new vlog that I hope you'll, well, I don't know if like is the right word. I've put a nice, cute, furry animal on there so that everybody can relax, and because we're going to talk about weighty things, which is, in this case, the Iraq War. Now, what I want to do with this is explain to people why I supported it at the time, why I would no longer support it, which is different than why other people would not support it, and why I would never support such an action again. Those are the three things I want to get to. Well, the first part of it is let's go back to the original Iraq War. Now, the popular notion out there is that we went to war under false pretenses. We went to war under false pretenses. We were told that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and that he was going to use them imminently on the United States, and therefore we went to war to stop him from doing that. Now, this is so much hogwash, it's almost unbelievable it's gotten any traction. You have to be a complete know-nothing to believe this is true. You have to have listened to no speeches at all. You had to have studied the issue not one bit. You had to be one of those blind people who was like, yeah, let's go kick butt. And then after it didn't turn out to be as easy as you thought, said, oh, well, I guess I'm not for that after all. You had to be one of those people. Because the reasons that we went to war and that were given for going to war were incredibly numerous. Now, the press will never tell you this. They will never say that we will bring up these factors and what we were doing and why we were doing them, because they don't want you to know that. They never wanted you to know that. Even though they cheerleaded the war up to the war, they never, after popular opinion turned against it, after they saw reason to feel to make profit from see, the media is really funny. The media up to a war, leading up to a war, will cheerlead for it, and that's how they build up this fervor and this sentiment, and they sell newspapers that way. And then on the other side of it, when the war is going badly or not as well as they thought or people thought, they sell newspapers the other way by trashing the war effort. That's what they do. And that's what the New York Times did. That's what the Washington Post did. That's what all the major media did, except for maybe Fox News. And they had their own issues, God knows. So, but let me give you some of the reasons why at the time we went to war with this guy, Saddam Hussein. Now, it's typical for people on the left to say that Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. And they say that like it's a throwaway line. Oh, yeah, he was a bad guy, but he wasn't a bad guy. This guy was one of the worst figures in all of human history. I mean, we got a skewed view of this because there was a Hitler and a Stalin and a Mao and a Pol Pot. But Saddam Hussein was responsible for millions of deaths. Millions. Not, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, not some kids crying at the border because they've been separated from their moms for a couple of weeks. We're talking about millions of dead people caused by this guy and his regime. He started 2 wars with his neighbors. One of those wars was in Iran. The Iran-Iraq War, I forget how the figure, but I think it was 2 million people ended up dead in that war. During that war, Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons against the Iranians. So he did something that nobody had really done in history after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He used WMD on an enemy. He would later use WMD on the Kurds to the north. Women and children just curled up in the street from, I think it was mustard gas or sarin gas, one or the other. So we're just getting started. We're just getting started with this guy. So that's one thing he did. He's responsible for 2 million deaths in the Iran-Iraq war. He's responsible for any number of deaths within his own borders. He's responsible for any number of deaths in Israel. He used to pay terrorists to go blow themselves up in pizza parlors for $10,000. I believe he gave the families of the so-called martyrs. He would just hand them money. Say, yeah, go kill yourself in there. And we'll, even during the Gulf War, he lobbed bombs toward Israel. Was Israel at fault? No, they didn't have anything to do with it. But he attacked them anyway. He threatened to attack Saudi Arabia. And no matter what you think of that country, they are something of an ally of ours. They are some place where we get a lot of oil. And I love the left. They always say, no blood for oil. Let me tell you something. I'm not a big fan for blood for anything, but if you're going to have blood for something, have blood for oil. Oil is responsible for all of modernity. Everything that we value and treasure and count on relies on oil. You don't think it's important for oil? You don't think, blood and treasure shouldn't be spent on oil? Just think about what it would be like to call an ambulance and they say, yeah, we'll get there in a couple of weeks when we get some gas. Think about what that would mean if you're like, your wife or husband or your child was in some kind of dire straits and they just couldn't get here because there's no gasoline, there's no oil for the engine. There's no air conditioning in the summer, there's no heat in the winter because you don't have oil. Let me tell you, there's the one thing in the world that's worth spending blood and treasure on. It's oil. We need oil. I'm a big fan of getting our own oil from our own places, but it's if you're gonna have a war, there's nothing better to have a war over than that. So we're just getting started. Those are so he's used chemical weapons and conventional weapons on his neighbors multiple times. Of course, he invaded Kuwait. Took over that small country. And did all kinds of things on his way out of Kuwait. He burned up the oil fields and created ecological disasters. Burning up the oil fields. We're still paying for that, as far as humanity goes. Talking about ecological disasters, he drained the marshes in his in southern Iraq. This is something that it caused incredible ecological damage. Whole species wiped out, and it's just terrible. Environmentalists are like, oh, it's Trump is so terrible with the environment. This guy didn't care about the environment at all. It's a matter of who cares. After the Gulf War, after we drove him out of Kuwait because he said it was another province of Iraq, after we drove him out of that country, we set up no-fly zones. In those no-fly zones where we were sending American pilots, he repeatedly fired on our pilots, on the U.S. pilots. Now, he didn't hit anybody. He tried to, but he didn't hit anybody. But it doesn't matter. Imagine if Mexico was shooting at our soldiers, and if they missed. Or imagine if Canada started lobbing bombs at our planes. You cannot. These are acts of war. Every time he did, and he did it hundreds of times. Hundreds of times he shot at our planes, and our pilots are very good, so they never got caught. They never got in trouble. They never died. Never even had to lay down a plane, I don't believe. But it doesn't change the fact that every time he did this, hundreds of times, it was an act of war. You don't get to shoot at Americans repeatedly and not pay some kind of repercussion for that. We forget that Saddam Hussein, in addition, we talk about Russian espionage. The Russians hacked the elections. Putin's such a bad guy. He hacked the elections. Saddam Hussein tried to assassinate an ex-American president, George Bush the father. Put aside, I don't know what your politics are, but put aside your politics for a moment and get your head around that. Imagine if some leader tried to assassinate Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or any Democrat. if you're a Democrat. But try to understand that this is an intimidation of the United States, of their presidents. Even Bill Clinton wouldn't stand for it. He bombed. I think he bombed the aspirin factory. It's completely a weak response, but he did respond, because you can't try to influence American, put up fear in American leaders by trying to assassinate them. Nobody in world history outside of Saddam Hussein has ever tried to assassinate a president, a former president or a president. You've had people within the country who have done that, but you've never had an outside source try to do that. And so he did that as well. We forget all this stuff. I've just given you 5 reasons to go to war with the guy, but I'm not done. We know that he filled up mass graves in Iraq. We've seen them. We've accounted for them. People went looking for the bodies of their loved ones in them. We know that there were people who were taken and raped and tortured and everything else. Every kind of human atrocity done to people. And we know that he was unrepentant. We know that he had 2 sons, and they were worse than he was. They were more evil than him. It's just hard to believe, but it's true. George Bush, when he laid out before Congress the full case against Saddam Hussein, mentioned all these things. He listed them one after another, after another, after another. And eventually he came around to other things, like the famous, I think it was 7 words or 9 words or 13 words or 17 words or whatever it is, that said, he was in Nigeria looking to get, material to make a nuclear bomb. And whether that's true or not, I don't care whether it is. We know that he had nuclear ambitions. We know that. Now, he was a long way off from ever achieving that, but we know that one of the reasons he was a long way off is because the Israelis bombed his nuke site. They knew about it, and they took it out. This is long before George Bush ever came around. It's the only reason he probably never got a bomb. But he certainly, with the right materials, could have made something like a dirty bomb. Now, a dirty bomb, you don't have to deliver it in on a tip of a intercontinental ballistic missile. You can just bring it over to Paris and blow it up with regular explosives, and it will disseminate, and you can kill 10, 20,000 people in the heart of Paris, and there's still fear across the world. You could do that. It'd be pretty easy. But he wasn't just messing around with nuclear stuff. We know for a fact that he, not guessing, we know for a fact that he had in his possession, over a period of time, mustard gas, sarin gas, a few other WMDs, maybe some biologicals. And we know that in the northern part, where he was training Al-Qaeda members, we know that he was dealing with ricin. Now, let me explain ricin to you. Do you know anything about this WMD? Ricin is a product. It's something you make out of the castor bean. You remember castor oil, and kids would be made to eat it, and they make that funny face because it tastes so terrible. Well, castor beans are a protected thing. You can't buy this stuff. If you try to buy a lot of castor beans, they will send a government official to your house and probably arrest you, because it means that you're probably trying to make ricin. And ricin is an odorless, tasteless poison that is so potent that a speck of it, like a grain of sand, is enough to kill a man. It doesn't take much. It's so potent that it will, the people who make it often die because it just gets in their skin or something. But you can make it in your own kitchen. It's feasible to do this. And we know that he was training people in the north. This is not a guess. We have videos of it and intelligence on it. We know that he was training Al Qaeda members in the north in making ricin. And ricin ended up, people trying to make ricin in like England and places like that. Now just imagine what it would do to the country if somebody with this knowledge, the ability to take ricin out of castor beans, with government funding backing it up, and government secrecy from Iraq and agents and an open border to the south. They bring up the castor beans, they get in the kitchen, they get their masks and their gloves, and they start making ricin. And then you give it to, Joe Muhammad, and you tell him, go from grocery store to grocery store and put some ricin on people's grapes, on their apples, on their lettuce, on their pasta, on little sandwiches, on little hot dogs at the 7-Eleven. Just go out and spread it far and wide. Drop it in people's coffee as you're walking by. They leave coffee out in Starbucks when they're, trying to flirt with some girl. Just put a little bit in their coffee. It doesn't take much. They won't taste it. They won't smell it. They can't. And they're dead painfully in agonizing fashion almost within minutes. That's what ricin is. It is the scariest shit you can imagine. And that's what he was playing with in the north. Now, just think what that would do to the American economy. We'd all be eating out of cans. Maybe. If we could bring ourselves to feed our kids even that. Whole industries would collapse overnight. It would be horrendous. And yet we talk about WMD like, oh, well, that could never happen because he couldn't have built a nuke. People are so utterly ignorant when it comes to this stuff that it baffles me. And the media keeps them that way, partially because they know if you knew the truth, if you understood this stuff, you would live in a lot of fear. And you would want to close that frickin' border to the south a lot. You would not be for the globalist agenda at all, and this open moving of people. You just wouldn't be for it. Oh, I know, pussycat. So listen to me when I tell you this. There were plenty of reasons to go and take this guy out. That regime was problematic across the board. And everybody in the government knew it. Everyone. And so the left went hysterical. And they started saying he only wants to do it because he tried to kill Daddy, as if that's no big deal. And he lied about WMD when he didn't. And that he never gave any other reason when he did. Now, some of the stuff was a bit far-fetched. When Colin Powell went to the, to the UN and started talking about, drone planes flying over American cities and spreading gas over the population, probably not. Probably not. It seems a little unlikely. He gets shot down pretty fast. I guess anything's possible. You can have a drone but I don't think that would be a large scale attack. I guess if you had a dirty bomb attached to it, I guess it's possible, but it's far fetched. It's pretty far out there. You have to really, you'd have to do a lot of preparation for that, and you wouldn't need to. That's the thing. With ricin or some kind of other thing that's you can whip up poisons and arsenics and all kinds of poisons that you can do. There's lots of ways to terrorize people. And so when you have regimes out there that have proven that they are aggressive, proven that they are willing to use these kinds of weapons, proven that they don't have the soul inside to stop them from doing anything like that, and proven that they're in the process of doing it now and have been in the process all along, then yeah, that's a problematic regime. And I'm not sorry. The guy wasn't a bad guy. He was a monster. He was absolutely horrendous. And that's why I supported him going down. That's why I supported sending my brothers, the guys I served with in the army, out there to face death or crippling or maiming. That's why I did it. And also because, just that there be hope for there to be peace in the Middle East finally. So that those people, especially a lot of the Christians there, could have some kind of semblance of a life that doesn't involve terror and tyranny. That all sounded pretty good to me. A little utopian, maybe. And now I see it as really utopian. As not just utopian, but not going to happen. It's just not feasible. Those people really, you would think that, we think in terms of Western civilization as Western civilization people, as a culture that's been built up over these many, many centuries. What is axiomatic to us and what it just seems natural to us is not natural to a lot of people in the world. And so you have to just accept it. You have to accept that they just don't want that. They don't want women to have the rights that we allow women to have. They don't want it. They take one look at the stuff over here, and it's not just the men over there. The women over there don't want it. It's women pack their kids up and send them off to freaking go blow themselves up in an Israeli pizza parlor. Not just men doing this. Women go and blow themselves up now. It's the whole culture is like this. The whole culture. And I just don't think that you can go in there and say, hi, we're the good guys. How about changing? And like, nah, I don't think so. Actually get worse. So, yeah, he was a bad guy. And that's why I supported it. That's why, when I looked at when I weighed the dangers, the real ones, the slightly less real, and then the fanciful, and then I weighed his history, the stuff he'd already done, the stuff he promised to do, the fact that when he died, he was an older guy. He had 2 sons to take his place, and they were as bad as he was, if not worse. When I look at all this and I added it all up, and it was bipartisan consensus on this. Hillary Clinton voted for it. John Kerry voted for it. People who were supposedly far left, voted for it. They all said, yeah, this regime change in Iraq has been the policy of the United States for a long time. And it was. Under Democrat and Republican administrations. And so I supported it. But now I'm going to tell you why that was a mistake. And it isn't a mistake, as I said, because we were lied to. We were not lied to. Oh, maybe the emphasis was a little too hard on this or too much that. But this is low information stuff. This is a problem. You can get away with being told you were lied to if you're a low information person. If you were told that George Bush went up there and said, well, they got nukes, let's go get them. And you believe that that's really was his entire argument. If you really think that, you are a low information person. You're a person who is not dealing in reality. You didn't study the issue. You were either for it or against it, but either way, you were not paying attention. So that's not why I am against it now. Why I'm against it now, and why I will forever be against any kind of war for this country that is not dealing with an immediate or imminent or present attack, is simply this. I watch the Democrats. I watch them before it, and then I watch them turn. I watched them turn on their own effort, on their own soldiers, on their own blood that was shed for that effort. I watched, as soon as that was politically unpopular, I watched them cut and run like the fucking cowards they are. Every last one of them. Now, a Bernie Sanders can say, I was never for it, and he's right. He never was. Okay. A Kucinich can say, I was never for it, and he's right. He never was. But those people who were for it, and then they say, oh, we were lied about it because it got unpopular? No. You're cowards. You're punks. You're losers. You don't deserve any kind of respect. And when they turned on it, they didn't turn on it when it was over. That'd be one thing. That'd be bad enough. Historically, turn on it. You see that sometimes. 50 years down the road, Democrats are not for the KKK anymore. Okay, I get it. It's not popular before the KKK anymore, so they're not. I get it. But these people turned on the Iraq War while it was still going on, while there were still men in the field, while there were still people shedding blood on the sides of Iraqi roads. That is absolutely despicable. When you talk about President Trump being treasonous, the whole Democratic Party has been treasonous since that time. Absolutely. You do not send people into battle and then turn on them. Ever. Ever. The idea that somehow, we were fooled into supporting the war. Well, first of all, if that's true, then you're a freaking moron, okay? You're a moron. If you can get fooled into going to war, if you could be, really, think, there is no more important decision in a congressperson's or senator's life than the decision to take the country to war. That's it. If you were deceived by that extremely articulate and awfully intelligent George W. Bush, if his eloquence was enough to deceive you into voting for something that was completely and totally false, you're a moron. You're a flat-out moron. But it's not true. You know it's not true. They know it's not true. They just also know what their Democrat voters want to hear. And so they tell it to them again and again and again and again. And they lie and they lie and they lie and say, this is the only reason we went to war. I was deceived. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I should never have voted for it. But I was deceived. I was an innocent victim here, just like you. And just like those thousands of U.S. Soldiers and all those Iraqi people, they were all innocent victims of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, and their wonderful, Orwellian ability to deceive everybody all at once. It's despicable. It is absolutely despicable. And because I know now that we have a political party that will bend in the wind every time, I cannot support any kind of military action. Any kind. I don't care if there's a Democrat in Congress, president. I don't care if there's a Republican president. Unless we are being attacked, or our allies are being attacked, and I'm talking really being attacked. I'm talking bombed. I'm not talking about, they had a bad day or something like that, or some terrorist came in and blew up a church or something. I'm talking about unless we are attacked, there was imminent bombs in the air or planes overhead. No. But if we are to go to war, if we are ever to go to war again in this country in my lifetime, it cannot be the president's sole decision. It was never meant to be the president's sole decision. It was never meant in the Congress. The founders never intended this. The Constitution states clearly that only Congress can declare war. And if we are to go to war, then the president must go to Congress and he must get a declaration of war. And if those people sign on to that war, that's it. That is, you don't get to backtrack it. You don't get to say, we have different information now, or, we were deceived. None of that crap. You own it. You voted for it. You own it. And the president should only do what Congress says they should do. Obviously, if we're being attacked, then you expect the president to deal with that situation immediately. But at the first earliest opportunity, he should go to Congress and say, now it's on you. If we're going to continue fighting, you have to declare war. And we should do that each and every time we use the military on any country, ever. Ever. No more wars. No more trying to do the right thing by people, or being the world police, or the Bush doctrine where we try to prevent problems before they arise. None of that stuff. It didn't work. It didn't work in part because there's only so much American wealth and American power to go around. And it didn't work because the Democrat Party did not have the intestinal fortitude to stand by the decisions it made and blow in the wind with the political changes. And so that's my stance on it now. That is my stance on war. And that is why I support Donald Trump, because that's basically his stance. Basically, I mean, he hasn't said any of this stuff about going to get, permission from Congress. And I'm not especially fond of his bombing Syria a couple of times, although I understand why he did it. But I think that he is really reticent to take us to war over anything. And I think that's a good thing. I think he knows that there is no way that he would get Democrat support. But even if he got it, it would be fleeting. It would probably be fleeting from the same warmongers on the right who would push him into war, and then immediately, or in a couple of years, or however long it took before popular opinion turned against it, blame him for the war. I think he knows all that. I think he understands it. And I think that he has done everything that he can do to not have to go to war. You look at what he's doing with North Korea. He knows that's a problem. Look, they're firing nuclear test rockets over Japan. That's a problem. Okay? That's a problem. All he has to do is find a way to put one of those nukes on the tip of that missile, and then send it over to Tokyo and Seoul. And what are we going to do? We got to respond. And then China's got to respond to us. And then what? Well, I'll tell you what. I don't know what then what, because I won't be around. China will put a freaking nuke right in my chimney. And so, I'm not for war. I never liked it to begin with. I don't care for it. I think there are times when it's absolutely necessary. And I think there are times when it can do some good in the world. That's not a popular thing to say. But not at this time. Not with this polarized situation. Not with the Democrats acting the way they're acting. It's just not going to happen. I would never support any kind of military action outside immediate self-defense. And I think that's a good principle in general in life. You should never be violent to anyone unless you're defending yourself, or you're defending somebody who's innocent. You're defending a friend or a family member from somebody who's being aggressive. But that's, taken to the national stage. I think that there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said for isolationism. We've moved away from that as a country. Really not. It's really been since Eisenhower. Only since Eisenhower that we've had this doctrine where we would go around and, it's in some way the Monroe Doctrine was a little bit like that, but for the most part, it's really only been since Eisenhower and Korea that we have been fighting wars in which they are not essentially self-defense wars, or we've not been attacked, or our allies have not been attacked. It's only been since then that we've, been fighting, and we don't need to do it. Really, we don't. I mean, look, Russia, take Russia for example, or China, either one, doesn't matter. But especially Russia. Russia is not an ideological competitor to us. They're just not. What they are, and what they have been, and what they will continue to be, is a national competitor to us. Now, a national competitor to us, it presents problems, but it's not like they're going to come to America and convert anybody to Russia-ism. Communism was an ideology that needed to be defeated in the minds of men. I'm not sure that we've completely done it, by the way, but that that is a different kind of enemy than the person who's like, well, we really would like to have, Montenegro back or whatever, or Georgia. That's a different kind of problem, and that's a problem that we can work out either diplomatically or through allies or through, if need be, some kind of, real threat to their economics and sanctions and all the other tools first before we ever get to that point. And they're just not a threat to us. Russia's not a threat to us in any way. Neither is China, really. North Korea is something of a threat to us, and so is Iran, something of a threat, because they lose cannons and they can send at any time terrorists here to do great damage to our economy and our not really our population. Look, we have 300 million people. It's hard to kill 300 million people. You got to have a lot of bombs to do that, but you can kill off a lot of people, and you can do a lot of damage to a nation. With just look, every time there's a school shooting, I think 17 people were killed in Parkland, Florida. Is that right? Technically speaking, that's not a lot of people. Statistically speaking, 17 people is not important to a country the size of the United States, or even a state the size of Florida. But emotionally, it's devastating. Not just for the people involved. We know that. That goes without saying. But even for our country, to lose 17 children is heartrending. It's terrible. And I'm a pro Second Amendment guy, but it doesn't change the fact that losing children like that to a freaking, shooter is just awful. And so, it's we need to, what we need to do is do the stuff that Trump is saying we should do, which is seal the border, so that these people can't get in. Start putting ricin on the candy, and otherwise, mind your own business. Try to mind your own business as much as possible. And Europe, they just need to start taking care of themselves. They need to stop relying on us to pay their bills and pay their defense. They sit there all scandalized because our special relationship is threatened. Well, especially, if somebody's paying, all your bills, you have a special relationship, all right, but that special relationship is completely one-sided. It's time for you to grow up. It's time for Europe to grow up and stop, it's not World War II anymore. We're not trying to rebuild you anymore. Go out and, build up your defenses. You're afraid of Russia, then fine, spend the money how you see fit. But we're not going to get in a nuclear war because you're upset because Russia is doing this or doing that. Haven't even invaded anybody in Europe. So again, let me just repeat the three themes here. I explained why I supported the Iraq War, why I would no longer support that war, and I supported it for all the reasons I gave you, and I would not support it because the Democrats turncoat. And finally, I would not support any war except barring those wars in which we are defending ourselves from imminent or present attack. And I hope that sounds reasonable to people. I hope that doesn't sound like it's extremely partisan, because I don't think it is. It is a little pro-Trump. It is pro-nationalist. It is a little isolationist. I become isolationist. The Democrats have forced me to become isolationist. And that's where I stand. And you can take it, and you can leave it. But as always, God bless you.